How exactly are we designing DPIs to be inclusive, to include the deaf, hard of hearing, or even the blind? Because as technology advances, we're moving from the physical to the digital. And, for example, the blind, they use Braille a lot. How exactly are we ensuring that while we are advancing, that these smaller groups are accounted for? Because even in Jamaica, we have a lot of work to do in regards to or Jamaican Sign Language. And as time progresses, we can see how not just government spaces, but other institutions have seen the importance of including Jamaican Sign Language. So I'm just hoping that that's something that we're considering while we're having these conversations about framework and how best to include these groups also. Well, now we're going to move on to our panel discussion. 4 chairs, so you know what that means. 4 persons on the panel. And I'm very excited to introduce them to you. They'll be speaking on the Advancing Regional Corporation, insights from CTU, ELAC 2026 agenda, and the OSPO initiative at UWI St Augustine. So this session will present the components of the ELAC 2026 digital agenda in driving digital transformation process in the Caribbean. Discussions will highlight regional cooperation, policy frameworks, and strategies to accelerate digital inclusion, innovation, and economic growth through technology. So I'm going to introduce the panel. And as I introduce them, I just ask them to just come up and join me here on the platform. So let's start off with our moderator, Dr. David McBean, who is the Executive Director of the Mona School of Business and Management. So Dr. McBean holds the Bachelor of Science in Electrical and Computer Engineering from the University of the West Indies and a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Engineering Science from the University of Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship. He has over 30 years experience as a senior executive, serving across the airline, telecommunications, and media industries in the Caribbean. So now I'm inviting to join me Mr. Rodney Taylor, and he is the Secretary General of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. So Mr. Rodney Taylor is currently the SecGen at CTU, an intergovernmental organization responsible for harmonization of telecommunications ICT policies within the Caribbean. Prior to this, he worked as business development and operations manager at CTU and oversaw negotiations with the World Bank on the Caribbean Regional Infrastructure Communications Project, CARCIP. Please put your hands together for him. Up next, we have the Associate Economic Affairs Officer of the UN ECLAC, and that is Mr. Dimitris I want to make sure that I pronounce it correct. Heraklios. Wow, wow, wow. Pat myself on the shoulder right there. I was really trying to get it really, yes. So he graduated from the University of Cyprus Business School and holds a master's degree in international relations. As part of the Digital Transformation Unit, he is a member of the team serving as the technical secretariat at ELAC, the digital agenda for Latin America and the Caribbean, with a personal focus on the Caribbean region. Put your hands together for him. But let me tell you a bit more about the great Dr. Kim. Yes, the great. And she's a senior lecturer at the UWI at St Augustine. So she's a senior lecturer and the leader of the Communication Systems Group in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of West Indies, St Augustine, where she chairs the campus's ICT Steering Committee. Dr. Kim developed and delivered UWI's master's degree in telecommunications regulation and policy to participants from over 30 developing countries and lectures in Carnegie Mellon University Center for Executive Education in Technology Policy. And she's also the deputy chair of the Board of Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago and the chair of its board review committee.
As the topic says, we're looking at primarily ELAC 2026 agenda, which is about cooperation between Latin America and the Caribbean. So in order Demetrius will first give us an overview of ELAC and what it means from the ECLAC perspective. Then Rodney will speak about how the CTU is working with this agenda and bring it to what it means to the Caribbean. And then Kim will tell us about some wonderful initiatives happening at UWI from St Augustine in, implementing this and our partnership with the World Bank, which I think was announced yesterday. I hear it's IDB, not World Bank. So Demetrius, over to you. So as I said, they'll just go up in order and roughly 7 minutes each for the presentation, plus or minus, and then we'll have some questions and discussion afterwards. So Demetrius, over to you.
So thank you again. I'm Dimitris Lakleous, and it's an honor to be here in behalf of the United Nations Economic Commission for the Latin American and the Caribbean. And I will present today ILAC 2026 agenda, and I will try to do it not as a theoretical political concept, but as a solid action plan for the Caribbean. For us and for the region, ILAC agenda the last 20 years is not just a roadmap; it's a shared digital vision. And so to begin, I adapted a bit my presentation. I will begin slightly differently. This is a very beautiful village, possibly a town 30 miles outside of London. And it's relevant to our discussion because it was the first place in the planet back in 1881 that had the first electrified public infrastructure. It was the first place that introduced electric public lighting on their streets. And that it was in back 140 years, more than 140 years ago, back in 1881. And let's take a leap forward. This is a very recent NASA photo from the space. This is how the world was last night, possibly or a few nights ago, and it's much more bright and much more vivid than what it was when Godalming had a light 140 years ago. And look at Jamaica; it's like a bright star in the Caribbean Ocean. But this brightness is not universal. It's not for everybody, and we don't need to go as far as South Sudan, where only 8.4% of the population have access to electricity. Possibly just look across the ocean across the sea to Hispaniola. I don't know if it's visible there, but shows a very difficult reality on the ground. And I introduced those two slides. I came up with those two slides yesterday when there was a discussion with the idea about those two slides. When we had a discussion about the 5% and about what will happen to the 5%. And in reality, the history shows that there will be a 5%. There will be a 5% in the digital transformation. There will be a 5% within our communities, 5% within our nations, 5% within our region, and 5% within the whole planet. And there was a question earlier today that asked if we can leap all together forward. And I don't know what the ChatGPT will ask there, but the historic data says that possibly there isn't. Somebody will be left behind. And if we don't want our region to be left behind, we should start now, Professor Malayo, but we should aim to the 5%. We should put as our target the 5% in order not to leave anyone behind. And by this being said, I don't want to be Cassandra. I don't want to bring always the bad news. But the numbers does not give me the margin. And an economic an economic benchmark for the Latin American and the Caribbean was the famous lost decade of 80s. It where the rest of the world, and especially the economies of the southeast of the East Asia, took a big leap forward, but we stayed behind. And unfortunately, the last decade between 2014 and 2023 was even more lost than the famous lost decades of 80. And this is the reality. This is the reality of the numbers. And we are trapped. We are trapped in a triple trap. We have a low growth, high inequality, and very fragile institutions. And this is a trap that we need to overcome. And digital transformation is a crucial factor on this. Yesterday, I said about the productivity. I spoke briefly about the productivity issue. And in reality, the main problem of the productivity issue that we have, of the low productivity that we have in the Latin America and the Caribbean, is exactly the lack on digitalization and digital skills. And if we don't want to be the 5%, if we don't want to be left behind as a region, we have to act boldly, act today, act fast, and act together. Mr. Robert Kanaja inspired us earlier. It shows clearly that there is the opportunity to nations to change their destiny. And that's why we're here, to change the destiny of our region. And exactly Get Together is in the very heart of the ILAC agenda. The ILAC agenda was first presented in 2005. It's a history of 20 years. And as Professor Malario said yesterday again, we simply can't survive without cooperation. And this is what we have to understand very well. There is always a fake dilemma there: sovereignty, independence, and cooperation. But this is not the reality. The reality is that the technology is there. We saw together that the technology is there. It's not a matter of technology. It's a matter of political decisiveness and political willingness. And that's why we need all to concentrate our efforts to our administration, to our government, every one of us from their own spot, to bring the whole region forward together. So last November, we had the ministerial conference of ILAC. The ministerial conference is the process that it took place every 2 years. The agenda is renewed, is discussed, and determined from the ministers of the Latin American and the Caribbean. And I have to say, as an eyewitness this time, that the Caribbean came prepared, confident, and strategic. And it wasn't the poor cousin, but a full equal partner in the discussion. 11 Caribbean nations participated, a delegation of more than 30 people, and Trinidad and Tobago was selected as a vice president of the ILAC board. And I have to say, Mr. Cordell Green is there. He was presented in the negotiation, not only presented, but he was very active during the negotiation. The agenda wasn't handed out. It wasn't a document that was crafted in Buenos Aires, Santiago, Sao Paulo, or Bogota. It was a document that was built with the Caribbean for the Caribbean. So I will run very, very fastly the prime documents of the prime outcomes of the ministerial conference. We have the regional digital agenda, the one that was negotiated and agreed from the ministries of the region. Santiago Declaration, a bold and ambitious document which determines the dedication of the region for digital transformation together as one unity. And the document, which is the roadmap to achieve the ILAC digital agenda, is the Overcoming Development Traps in Latin America and the Caribbean document. And I don't know if it's scannable, but here you can see the documents. But also, if you search online about the ILAC documents, you can find them very easily. So, in reality, the Latin America and the Caribbean is addressed together. We refer a lot to Latin America and the Caribbean, but there are two different regions or two different sub-regions, if you want. It doesn't matter how we call them. The fact is that although there are common challenges, common issues to be addressed, there are different realities on the ground, and those different realities on the ground asks for a tailor-made approach and different approach. We can't unify Latin America and the Caribbean in terms of solutions. In terms of solutions, we have to see the realities and create the plan which will address the necessities of the region. And in ICLAC, through the ILAC agenda, we created and we are working on an action plan for the Caribbean, an action plan which will be tailor-made, especially for the Caribbean, with more resources, targeted studies, and tailored support and technical assistance to the nations. I will present some of the elements of the ILAC agenda and how ILAC process is able to support the digital transformation, the implementation of the agenda in the Caribbean. But I would like to say that ECLAC acts as the technical secretary of the ILAC. ECLAC acts as a facilitator for the implementation of the ILAC. The ILAC is a process that is coming from the nations to the nation. And I will present only a few of the elements that there are there to support the implementation of the agenda from the nation. So firstly, in 2023, we had for first time the presentation of the Latin American and the Caribbean Index for Artificial Intelligence. We all know very well that that policies without data, they are just guesses or just theoretical documents. More of the time, they are ineffective and untargeted. So ILIA is there to support the implementation of artificial intelligence policies to the countries. In 2023, we had the first issue, the first version of the index. It was the first and still is the only index for the Latin American and the Caribbean. It's a difficult and quite challenging effort to create an index in a region with such limitation in data. But in 2023, we had one country participating from the Caribbean, that was the Dominican Republic. In 2024, in the second edition, there were three countries there. And in the version of the 2025 that we are currently working on, we aim to have more countries assessed from the Caribbean. It's a progress that is an ongoing work, and I will make sure that everybody will be aware about the presentation, which possibly will be the new edition in October, next October. So I said that policies without sufficient data, they are more or less guesswork. And this is where the observatory, the digital transformation, the digital development observatory comes in front. The observatory is a tool for policymakers, a tool for people that they're active in the digital transformation scene, a tool for people that they want to develop policies, initiatives, and projects that in reality they want to make the difference. We have data for almost all the Caribbean countries. We have data which are helping to evaluate and to develop effective policies that will be able to help everyone. It's worth to be visited the Digital Development Observatory. Please do so, especially if you are in the world of policymaking. I believe that you will find it as a crucial element. And I would like to say something. There is a scarcity of data about digital transformation in the Caribbean. The difficulties to collect and to evaluate the data is pretty much one of the highest in the world. So it's an open call, a call to action. Please let's put our efforts together and make sure that we will concentrate all the necessary data to be able to create effective policies, because there are a lot of efforts going on, a lot of policy making process going on, a lot of initiatives about DPIs as we saw earlier. But in reality, if we don't build those efforts in solid evidence, we will shut in there, if I'm allowed the expression. So another element that we are working on in the context of ILAC 2026 agenda is tool of digital transformation in the Caribbean. There are a lot of capacity building activities going on within the ILAC 2026 agenda, but the School of Digital Transformation in the Caribbean is possibly the most emblematic of those. After 10 years of successful implementation in the Latin America, last year, Mr. Rodney Taylor, we had in Trinidad the first School of Digital Transformation and Innovation. It's an initiative that is created for mid to high level policymakers. Matthew was last year. Professor McNaughton also was there last year. I saw Miss Murray. I don't know if I missed anyone, but it's pretty encouraging that a lot of people that was last year in the school are here today. So the initiative is tailor-made, designed for the policymakers of the Caribbean to address Caribbean challenges, and by bringing together for a week mid to high level policymakers of the region, we are pretty sure that the outcome is not only technical, they don't only generate and gain technical knowledge, but as well we create this sense of unity and this sense of cooperation that is necessary to work forward together. This year, I can't skip that ICLAC and ILAC are not alone in this process. CTU is a crucial element for the development of the school in the Caribbean, along with CAF, CETIC Brazil, and yeah, that's it, pretty much. And the technical community, I'm sorry, yeah, the companies that they 1 minute, I'm finished. The companies that are making the technical community. So the last element of the group is a working plan. Is a working group for the Caribbean. The working group of the Caribbean is a group of policymakers and experts of the region which are getting together, discuss critical issues, and come up with an action plan. It's a new created group which was decided to be created last January after the increased interest of the Caribbean to the ILAC agenda. It's a group which has three basic elements. The first element asks as a regional platform of cooperation. Secondly, helps to the development of knowledge on demands from the nations. We are developing specific studies to address specific Caribbean issues. And of course, we are working to offer technical assistance in policy making and the regulations design. This is more or less about the work of the group. Currently, the Trinidad and Tobago is leading of the group, is the presidency of the group. I don't know if Shelian is here. Is here. Yeah, hello, Shelian. So, as I said, ECLAC is the technical secretary of the ILAC and of the working group. And with all the respect that all the secretaries we are doing, who wants to listen to the secretary if the president is here? I don't know, Shelian, if you want to make a comment now or a comment later, if there's a microphone. But Shelian is the chairwoman of the group in behalf of Trinidad and Tobago. We have a microphone, maybe, just for a quick comment.
A very, very quick comment. The participation of the Caribbean in the ELAC 2026 agenda is critical. We talk about South-South cooperation. This is South-South cooperation at work. So I am imploring whoever is here in terms of our policy development personnel to please participate in this group. The winds from the north that we are seeing is raising a tide, and I'd like to think that raised tide is going to take us south. We really do have to work collaboratively, and I can see how the DPI processes and what we've been speaking about can assist with that collaboration. Thank you, Dimitris.
So, just a couple of seconds by closing. ICLAC, by its definition, is a United Nations secretariat entity. So we are the forum, and we are facilitating the forum for everybody to participate without exclusion, without any prerequisitions. So there is an open call to all the nations, to all the countries that they want to get on board to join us in this effort. Because, as I said, if we don't want our region to be the 5%, we have to aim to the 5%. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for the time.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be going very quickly, so please thank you for your attention. So I'm Rodney Taylor. I spoke yesterday on the fireside chat, and I know the question yesterday was who amongst you this was their first time in Jamaica, and there were a lot of people. How many for the first time this week are hearing about the Caribbean Telecoms Union? Don't be shy. I know there must be at least a few. I won't be upset. Okay, a few. That's fine. That's okay. Understood. You know, sometimes our ministers when I'm dealing with new ministers for the first time, the first time they're hearing about the CPU. So I will actually just very quickly tell you that we have 20 member states in the Caribbean, including Cuba, of course, Jamaica, Bahamas, etc. So these are our 20 member states. So we're an intergovernmental organization and institution of the Caribbean community, or CARICOM. We also have several private sector members, so we're open to all of the operators in the market. Outside of the market, we have just recently Google, Meta, Amazon, and so on joining. So we're open to private sector membership. This is our structure, the General Conference of Ministers, the highest governing body. Those are made up of the ministers with responsibility for digital transformation or telecommunications or information technology, innovation, etc. And then below that is the Executive Council, which is primarily the most senior advisors to the ministers. They may be permanent secretaries or directors of telecoms, etc. And then I report directly to the Executive Council. They approve our strategy, our budget, and work plans, etc. And then there's the Secretariat based in Trinidad and Tobago. And I had the Secretariat with a team of about 15. A couple outside of Trinidad as well. So our core mandate: harmonize policy formulation at the regional level, coordination of regional project, capacity development, representation at international fora, and industry watch. What is happening within the industry that involves, of course, research and paying attention to competition in the market, new players, new technologies like direct to device, and how that impacts the um, the industry, cybersecurity developments in artificial intelligence, etc. This is our last, you've heard of ICT Week. I mentioned that yesterday. Our next ICT Week is in Jamaica, September. Looking forward to be back here again. In fact, I'm meeting with the minister on Friday to discuss that and other matters. Our last one was in St. Kitts and Nevis. And here you can see Doreen Bogdan Martin, the Secretary General of the International Telecoms Union, came to speak there to give the keynote address. The Prime Minister of Grenada. This is from a press release. Prime Minister of Grenada actually, so within CARICOM, there's a quasi cabinet, right? And each country has the lead responsibility for different things. And Grenada has the lead responsibility for science and technology, and hence he's often at our meetings and so on. You have representatives from private sector there as well. I mentioned representation. This is from 2022, the ITU Plenipotentiary Conference. So we just not only the coordination of activities here in the region, but if we're engaging in international policy development. This is a Caribbean delegation meeting in the Plenipotentiary Conference. We met every single day. We drafted policy statements for member states. We went through the resolutions, and we had very strong support from the Caribbean youth delegation. We're building a youth network within the region and also a network of women. And we rely on them very heavily to help us cover the international policy development processes in ITU, in ICANN, and other spaces. This is at the World Radio Conference 2023. Again, coordination whenever we're participating in regional or international meetings. And this is the ministerial conference that was just mentioned. This is the Caribbean delegation. You see some here. You see Cordell Green there at the back. Some others who are not here, but you get the idea. So these are some of the regional priorities. The presentation is available. We came up with some of these priorities in preparation for the next big conference, which is the World Telecoms Development Conference, or WTDC, which is taking place in, I think it's November, in Baku, Azerbaijan. But I'll speak a bit more about this. So the CARICOM single ICT space that was mentioned, and it is really the question was asked yesterday if it was still relevant. It is still relevant. It is a digital embodiment of the CARICOM single market and economy. So how can we create one cohesive space that is conducive to investment? A lot of the operators in the region providing the telecoms infrastructure, they are pan-Caribbean operators. They like, Digistyle and Cable and Wireless and others. They are better able to make investments at the pan-Caribbean level if there's one cohesive set of policies and regulations governing them. And that's what the single ICT space is about. So harmonize policies, laws, and regulations, the extent to which every country has standard provisions within their telecoms legislation, the provision for universal service funds, lawful interception and stuff like that, data protection legislation, cybersecurity, etc., open data, that kind of thing. So robust regional broadband infrastructure to ensure that the networks are resilient. They can withstand disasters, they can withstand cybersecurity threat, etc. Regional framework for ICT service providers. So this speaks to the equitable and affordable access. Things like the elimination of roaming, which I mentioned as well, to ensure that you can move freely within the single space. Connected government networks to promote the development of government-wide area network to improve efficiency, and to deliver all that we're talking about, this digital public infrastructure, the services, without the network, robust network, and connected government departments, then this becomes a lot more difficult. E-delivery of services, of government services, social and commercial services, regional security and collaboration, and management. So the document itself, the CARICOM single ICT space, is a bit dated, and I recognize the need to update it, but it is still relevant as a guiding policy. These are some of the regional projects that we've collaborated on. CARSIP, the regional infrastructure, communications infrastructure project that connected some of the OECS countries using high-speed fiber connectivity funded by the World Bank. There's an ongoing project, the Caribbean Digital Transformation Project. We are on the Regional Steering Committee. We've developed some guiding documents as well. 1 minute. Well, okay, digital ID handbook. It's available on our website. It gives some guidance, 21st century government. So I'll move very quickly. These are some of the provisions in the digital handbook, right? Mutual recognition, true standards and framework. I spoke about my dream of presenting credentials issued in Trinidad, in Barbados, having it accepted even at the border or to register a company, etc. Again, some of the recommendations for digital identity in the Caribbean. In 2019, for the CTU's 30th anniversary celebration, the then Secretary General hosted the Caribbean Futurescape. This was meant to be a demonstration of what a digital Caribbean would look like. The issued credentials. Persons were able to move. So we had simulation of Barbados and Jamaica and Ghana, and moving throughout this space, presenting credentials, opening companies, spending digital currencies, and so on. And it was a very good demonstration of what the potential for the Caribbean would be. Lastly, I mentioned yesterday as well the elimination of roaming. This happened in 2022 under the framework of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy. We convene a forum of the regulators every year, sometimes twice a year, with a view to harmonizing those regulations governing the operators. And there's a project ongoing right now. We have the consultant right here, Ms. Michelle Marius, who's Jamaican, who's helping us in the formulation of the provisions for a regional regulatory body. As part of that project, I visited the West African Telecoms Regulatory Assembly this year, because this is exactly what they're doing in West Africa and East Africa as well. And I was able to meet with the Secretary General of the African Telecoms Union. I'm out of time, but this table shows you the synergies between ELAC 2026 and the CARICOM single ICT space. The provisions are very much aligned. And so in the execution of our single space, we will work very closely to ensure that we execute and deliver on the priorities within the ELAC 2026 as well. This is just a statement that we made for the Global Digital Compact, a contribution to the GDC with respect to Global Digital Commons and the promotion of open standards and open and free and open software. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. So, okay, so my 7 minutes. I want to talk so much more. I don't have time, so you will forgive me, please. Right, green. Yes. I am not here to promote open source. I'm not. But now that I'm here, recall the need for resource conscious innovation in SID. Don't have time to go into depth, would love another opportunity. I'm here also to note the possibilities for open source innovation to democratize telecommunications service development and delivery. And I'm only choosing the telecommunications sector because I follow the Secretary General of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. I'm also here to show the global impact of all-in cooperation in the sector and to share what the Trinidad and Tobago OSPO, Open Source Program Office, means to me. Let's consider opportunities for open source innovation to democratize telecom service development and delivery. I'm just going to give you two examples. I don't know how much you know about this, but just so you have a sense. So the first is what we call the GSMA Open Gateway. This is a framework of standardized APIs exposed by global mobile operators for carrier-grade access to network capabilities to do many things: enhance existing and deploy new services, bridge the telecom, telecom cloud ecosystems at last, to create new revenue streams, business models sorely needed in the telecommunications sector. Wish I had time to talk about that. And also to innovate across sectors: IoT, fintech, artificial and virtual reality, gaming, etc. There are many use cases. Another is Open RAN, Radio Access Network. I'm a radio engineer. And through this, the hardware and software components of telecommunications networks has been disaggregated. And Open RAN uses, as you can imagine, open interfaces and interoperability standards, enables multi-vendor integration and flexibility, reduces vendor lock-in, diversifies the supply chain, lowers procurement costs. We all love that. Notice I said procurement costs. I did not say the total cost. And extends the innovation space. These are opportunities, but opportunities are necessary, though not sufficient. I'm here to tell you that there are channels for global legitimization and impact using open source in the telecommunications industry in ways that has never been done before. Let me give you an example. Again, because I follow the Secretary General of the CTU, I'll give you the example of the UN ITU World Telecommunication Development Conference, which is the only one of the three statutory ITU conferences that Rodney did not mention just now with his pictures. This, like the other statutory conferences, is held every 4 years. And this year, my friends, is a WTDC year, World Telecommunication Development Conference. One of the artifacts that comes out of WTDCs is a resolution. And a WTDC resolution, inter alia, but resolutions, let's say, are formal decisions adopted by ITU member states. They give mandates to the development sector of the ITU. They guide national telecommunications policies and regulatory frameworks, promote and provide frameworks for international cooperation and collaboration. They influence how the ITU and its partners allocate technical, financial, and human resources to projects and regions. These resolutions are particularly important to LDCs and SIDS. Now let's consider a hypothetical resolution, shall we? The executive summary perhaps could read something like this: the proposed resolution recognizes open source technologies as a potentially transformative driver for innovation and development in the telecom ICT sector. It positions open source as a strategy capable of contributing significantly to bridging the digital divide, particularly for resource-constrained, developing and least developed countries. Drawing on existing UN and ITU best practice, open source solutions have the potential to democratize access to digital infrastructure in a manner that is adaptable and scalable to the needs of various member states, while mitigating risks associated with vendor lock-in. It can continue that it advocates for partnerships among governments, industry, academia, and open source communities to accelerate knowledge sharing and innovation, and urges the development sector of the ITU, which is the UN's specialist agency for telecommunications, to facilitate capacity building initiatives that empower countries to understand, assess, and where appropriate, adapt these technologies to meet their national and regional needs. The hypothetical resolution could continue describing the impact on the sector as, among other things, it will encourage developing nations to assess a more expansive range of strategies to strengthen their digital infrastructure, services, and capacity through local, regional, and international collaboration. The hypothetical resolution, to be responsible, of course, like all UN resolutions, would comprise various sections, which recalling, recognizing, considering, etc. And we would include, of course, specifications or recognition of the incumbent challenges and the need for an ecosystems-based approach to the adoption of open source anything. So let me tell you that the source of these WTDC resolutions are, in fact, individual member states of the ITU, and more so, the member states in aggregate across the various ITU regions of the world. We in the Caribbean and Latin America fit in the region called the Americas, AMS, the Americas region of the ITU. Regional proposals are submitted through ITU's regional telecommunications organizations. In our case, that organization is CITEL. And the proposals from the Americas are referred to as Inter-American Proposals, IAPs. The process to get an IAP to the WTDC, which is the conference, the process is long, laborious, and at every single stage, it requires the engagement of member states of CITEL, the Americas RTO. First, a country produces a preliminary proposal, much like the hypothetical one I just showed you. And then, if it is that that proposal gets the support of at least one other administration, becomes a draft IAP. And then that, if it receives 6 or more supports from other administrations in the region, in our case, the Americas, and no more than half of that number of opposers, then and only then does the proposal go on to WTDC as an IAP. At WTDC, and I have chaired the digital inclusion cluster at ITU at the last conference, and that was real stress because you are sitting with over 190 countries and getting them to agree on issues that are highly charged. So even if an IAP makes it to WTDC, then for it to become an ITU or WTDC resolution, there is a lot of engagement and challenge and response. But here's what. Oh, forgive me. Right. Yeah, sorry. Right. So that's the process, engagement required right through. And now my question to you is, what if that resolution that I showed you, what if it weren't hypothetical? What if it were real? What if a country, an administration in the Latin American and Caribbean, the Americas region, were to actually draft a preliminary proposal of this nature? Would your administration review it? Would your administration contribute to it? Ultimately support it at CITEL? The reason I ask you is this. We have heard time and time again over the last day and a half. How is the how? How do we do this? How do we collaborate? How do we move? And I'm showing you how. This is a tangible way of making a difference. So this is a tangible example of how cooperation can translate into global impact. So now, this is what I came to tell you about. And I don't know why my animations aren't working, and that really bugs me because it means that I'm giving you a content dump, which I really put a lot of effort into not doing, so that you would not have everything at once. But it is what it is. So you heard about the Trinidad and Tobago Open Source Program Office. We say OSPO. It will be homed on our campus, St Augustine campus of the University of the West Indies. And there are two major motivations. One is the OSPO will advance the adoption of open source as a key enabler to achieve SDGs, and the other is it will strengthen the capacity of the Ministry of Digital Transformation. So I'm here to tell you that what the OSPO, my OSPO, TT Trinidad and Tobago OSPO means to me is it means a legitimate and legitimized home for open source advocacy and support. Because we could talk as much as we want, unless there is a legitimate and legitimized home for it, it's very difficult to get traction. The TT OSPO, to me, is a purposeful and practical partnership. That's the other PPP between the University of the West Indies and the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, facilitated by key partners, competent and well-intentioned. Thank you, ITU. Thank you, UNDP. Thank you, IADB. And thank you all.
Thanks to our panelists. Another round of applause. In the interest of time, I think we can take 2 questions. 1 question. No questions? All right. No. Yes, go ahead.
In lieu of open office. That's a simple transformation we can all do, but we don't do it. Why is that? That's something that was important to think for us to then move, at a bigger scale for open source adoption.
If you don't mind, so very quickly, the fact of the matter is this. Proprietary software is easy. Open source software, don't shoot me, is hard. That's the fact of life. But that is not the only question. The bigger question is the case for open source, which is far more deeply and further reaching than just the issue of what's easy. It's easy to have somebody else pay for it and do so now. It's much harder for us to work for it and for the future. So if it is that your interest is in working for it and working for the future, then you will not go the route of proprietary unless those special cases where there are special cases. Okay.
My quick comment to that is I think we run a danger of making open source the enemy of proprietary software and vice versa. I think both have their places, and I think it comes back to what are you doing with open source that makes it so important to keep open source. I think your word processor is a personal choice, for example, and things are interoperable. It's different if you're building public infrastructure, which then has implications for cost and control and right. So thanks everybody, and I think we've had a great session. We've heard about collaboration and the possibilities in the Caribbean. So if we can't make CARICOM work, we certainly can make ELAC work. Thank you very much.
So that was the conversation on advancing regional cooperation.